Now, initially, I realised that I didn't think I'd had quite the right name to make a such success, such as Mary Quant or Max Factor, because they're all quite very glamorous names. And Emma Wimhurst I could never quite see in a department store or in Boots the Chemist, or even in a glossy magazine. But I still carried on searching, how can I combine this? And luckily, one day, I was listening to the radio or watching Top of the Pops, which really does show my age, but I was watching Top of the Pops, and onto the screens came the Spice Girls. And now some people remember them for their fantastic music. I don't quite remember them for that. I remember them for their fashion, for their brash, their bold, their bright colours, but in particular, their makeup. And it was the way they wore their makeup that really struck a chord with me. And I can remember thinking, now, who are the Spice Girls actually aiming for? It certainly wasn't me. I think I was about 28 or 29 at the time, or even 30. And whoever their target audience was, which was clearly a lot younger, where did they buy their makeup? Where did they buy those high fashion items that weren't particularly expensive in the right environment that they would feel comfortable in buying in? And that was really quite a big moment for me. And I ended up looking on the high street. And there were several places you could buy makeup. I'm not suggesting that I came up with the only outlet for selling cosmetics for that age group. But there was Boots and Superdrug. And in those days, Superdrug was quite an unglamorous environment. They've had a rebranding since, and they've gone for pinks and purples. But in those days, it was a very basic shop, and you could actually buy bleach around the corner for makeup. So it wasn't ever going to quite appeal to those teenagers. And then you had a Boots, of course, which were a little bit more serious. And I knew from my experience in the cosmetics industry that actually to get a new colour to the shelves would take about a year. And I wanted to shake that all about. Why would it take a year to create a new colour? And in fact, if fashion was coming out very quickly, why couldn't makeup? So I looked at the high street fashion outlets and thought, well, there's Miss Selfridge and there's Topshop. They were quite staid fashion outlets. Miss Selfridge was only in about 70 cities in the UK, so didn't have a massive distribution. But Topshop was probably in about the same number of stores, but in fact they were well ahead of their time because their makeup range looked very similar to MAC to nowadays, which is very staid, quite dull, muted colours, and was black packaging. And I felt that it wasn't quite up to date in a fashion environment. And Topshop in those days wasn't the mecca of fashion that it is today, with the likes of Kate Moss working for them. So I looked around and I realised that New Look were this fast-growing, rapid-growing, outlets that were growing at about 5 a week in the late 90s. And I went in there and they didn't have anything. They had no beauty products, they had no makeup products. And I really felt that this was going to be the match made in heaven. So to cut a very long story short, I went and knocked on their door and suggested, in my way, that they should take makeup. Now, I've made that very simple and very clear. It wasn't quite as easy as that, but for the purposes of today, we shall just accept that they agreed to see me. And luckily, they agreed with me.